Our next scientist has a chemistry degree, but not a job in chemistry, because there are 4 of those. He is an ophthalmic technician, and now it is our fun peer review pleasure to get to shine bright lights in his eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jordan Townsend.
Good evening. My name is Jordan. In 2016, I graduated with my bachelor's in chemistry, but chemistry jobs are kind of hard to find. So I'm working for a group of ophthalmologists now. Especially because the Breaking Bad thing is a little played out. That being said, if any of you have some extra Sudafed, hook me up. Deal with allergies. Now, working in the medical field means that a lot of my jokes are HIPAA violations. So, before we get started, are there any fans of HIPAA here? I'm gonna need you guys to get out, go across the hallway, get a drink or something, come back in 10 minutes. Now, I want to start by making a distinction here. There are 2 different types of eye doctors. There are optometrists, they're the ones that prescribe you glasses and contacts. And then there are ophthalmologists, whom the optometrists turn to when glasses and contacts no longer do anything. Now, this takes a lot of schooling and usually 3 years of residency as well, so ophthalmologists are absolutely brilliant in their own field. Outside of it, not so much. In areas like time management. For example, I once worked with an ophthalmologist who, while having a waiting room full of people, went across the street to King Soopers and did all his shopping. In case you're wondering why your wait's so long. They also have horrible taste in music. There is an ophthalmologist I've worked with who insists every time he's working that the radio be turned to Coffee House, which is acoustic covers of songs that should never, ever, ever be made acoustic. He says anything else is offensive to patients and won't listen to any of us when we remind him most of our patients are almost deaf as well as almost blind. And an acoustic cover of Metallica is just offensive to music in general. Now, before I started in ophthalmology, I was under the assumption that most people had a basic grasp of their own health. Just like before Facebook, I was under the assumption that most people had a basic grasp of science. It turns out that putting bleach up your child's ass does not cure their autism. That is a real thing people do. Now, I would absolutely love if everybody here tonight could make a commitment to at least have a general idea of your own medical history. It makes my job so much easier, and it makes the doctor's job so much easier. But if you're selfish and don't care about people like us, it makes your care better. Now, there are a lot of patients that are great and know their own medical history. The ones I will be talking about tonight are not those patients. Now, did we get all the HIPAA people out of here? If there are any of you straggling, these are not real cases. So I start the exam by asking the patient if there has been any change in their vision since we saw them last. This goes one of 3 ways. Either they come in and say, oh, my vision is perfect, I have absolutely no problems whatsoever. And then when I hold up a zucchini and tell them to count my fingers, they will say 4. And And then on the other end, there are the patients who come in an absolute panic, completely melting down, because they just discovered that they cannot read legal print from the other end of a hallway. In general, I've noticed there is a perfect inverse relationship between how much a patient is concerned about their eyes and how much they should be. Then there's a third group that just won't even answer your questions and just will talk about absolutely whatever they want to. Because of this, I think every eye doctor's office should have a giant sign that says, "Your eye doctor does not care about your genitals." And because most of these patients are almost blind, genitals needs to be really huge. Now, I check vision on all patients, and we know that you people try to memorize the eye charts to try to show your vision is better than it actually is. So, where I work, we use an eye chart that is completely random. There is a slight downside to this, however, in that I cannot control what letters are coming up on the screen. I once had a really sweet, conservative, innocent grandmother come in. She has one eye covered, she's looking at the eye chart, she's reading C, U, N, 2020, great, let's move on. Now, I often have to remind some patients that the eye chart only contains letters. Usually they just try to throw a number in. But then you get the ones that are reading it F, Z, lion's face, B. Or my personal favorite, a gentleman's reading it and we go to the next screen and he's like, "I see two birds mating." Dilating patients is always fun. We are sure to remind them at least 4 times before they get in the exam room that they are going to be dilated. Yet somehow, when I walk into the room and say, "Okay, it's time for me to dilate you," they freak out. Especially new mothers. They are also the ones that tend to freak out when I say, "Okay, now we need to get out the speculum." For your eyes. Keeps them open while we're working with them. At least 3 times a week, I get somebody who gets really upset. "Well, if you dilate me, I will not be able to see to drive home." "Well, sir, I just checked your vision. You are legally blind." "What do you mean you drove here?" Do me a favor and don't drive. Ever. And if you absolutely have to, call me first so I know not to be on the road. Now, eventually, I usually get them to agree to dilation, and I'll tell them to tilt their head back and open their eyes, and inevitably this will happen. It's a common misconception, but eye drops actually go in your eyes, not your mouth. Now, you may think that we dilate you to torture you. And we do. I have to have some revenge for sitting there for 5 minutes listening to you talking about a lump on your genitals. But it's also important because it would take a really long time looking through a pupil the size of a pinhole to try to find one little leaking blood vessel. Now, I have to check eye pressures as a screening tool for glaucoma. I once had a patient, I tell her this, and she just starts bawling. "Nobody told me I have eye pressure. This is horrible news." Ma'am, everybody has eye pressure. It's what keeps your eye from caving in on itself. Then there's medication reconciliation. People are often clueless about what medications they are taking and why. I have to brace myself every time. I'll say, "Are you still taking metformin?" Long pause. "What is that?" Well, it is a medication that you are taking for a condition that you apparently do not know that you have. I once asked a patient who was an actively practicing dentist if he uses any eye drops. His response, "I don't know, you will have to ask my wife." So I have to go out into the waiting room and find his wife. And I ask her, "Ma'am, does your husband take any eye drops?" And she says, "Yes, he takes these 2 eye drops 3 times a day." How do you not know that? Does your wife put you under general anesthesia for eye drops? Why are you allowed to prescribe medications to other people? I'm just glad you're not a pilot. Folks, this is your captain speaking. Big blinking red button. What does that mean? Health history is also fun. And once again, I remind you to please know your own medical history. At least once a day, I have to explain something you'd think would be obvious. Like, even if you take insulin, you are still diabetic. And even though the doctor that did the surgery tried to talk you down and say it's a minor thing he does all the time, a quadruple bypass is still a major surgery. Another role I have as a technician is going over consents for any treatment we have to do. This can get quite awkward. So today we're going to try to prevent your vision from getting any worse, but this is not a guaranteed treatment, and we know that it won't make your vision any better, but there's a small chance that there's going to be an infection because of this needle that we're sticking in your eye that's going to make you go blind. Please sign here while you can still see. I really don't envy the conversations that the ophthalmologists have to have with the patients, though. So the bad news is you have this incurable eye disease that is going to eventually lead to blindness. The good news is that with advancements in treatment, we think we can slow it down so you're not completely blind, at least until you die of heart failure. Unless you have a good cardiologist, then you might be going blind. Then there are the patients that are just beyond help. They're just so misinformed. I had a patient come in and tell me that when her eyes water, it is her brain leaking out of her eyes. I had another patient blame his vision loss on the fact that he was left-handed and had dyslexia. But then there was this one, and I will never forget her. She blamed her vision loss on her husband's beard. You laugh, but this makes perfect sense. So apparently, at night, intergalactic space worms would crawl out of her husband's beard, across the bed, and into her eyes, where they would proceed to destroy her vision. So the doctor and I could have told her that her vision loss was due to the fact that she had uncontrolled diabetes causing her retina to bleed. We could have told her that she had end-stage glaucoma, which has completely killed her peripheral vision. We could have told her that she couldn't see because her corneas were opaque. However, sometimes it is just easier to get a pair of tweezers and one by one pick out imaginary space worms and then write a prescription for a shaved beard. Thank you very much. My name is Jordan.